Lord, help you stay with me all the way to the end. I'm not as quick as I used to be. I'm 82 years old, and I'm going to tell you the 3 truths about living alone that nobody ever has the decency to say out loud. For 60 years I was told a woman without a husband was unfinished, like a quilt missing its last square, that living alone was the worst thing that could ever happen to a lady my age, that after 70 there's no time left for change, for discovery, for starting again. That was a lie. The truth is, I didn't begin living until I was 75. The truth is, loneliness isn't what ruins you. Not knowing yourself, that's what does it. Slow, quiet, like rust. And the hardest truth, the one that sticks in your throat, sometimes the greatest love you can give is to stop disappearing. Last week I was at the grocery store wearing my red dress, and Martha from down the road said, "Grace, you're too old to be drawing attention." I smiled at her, slow, and I said, "Honey, I'm too old to keep pretending I'm invisible." If you've ever felt invisible, if you've spent your whole life living for everybody else, stay with me. It matters. 7 years ago, when Harold died, I thought missing him would be the hardest part. I thought I'd sit at this kitchen table, staring at his empty coffee mug, talking to his photograph on the dresser. I prepared myself for grief. What I didn't prepare for was meeting myself for the very first time. Let me start where it truly began, not with his death, but with the day I learned to be quiet. I was 8, out in the yard, laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. The kind of laugh that shakes your whole body, makes tears run down your face. Mama stood in the doorway, like a shadow. "Grace," she said, sharp, like a cracked plate. "Come here." She pulled me inside, pointed to the blue church shawl hanging by the door. "A decent girl doesn't make noise. Good women don't draw attention." I made myself small behind that fabric. It smelled like starch and lavender soap. The wool scratched my cheek, but I stayed there until I felt myself fade. From that day on, I learned being quiet was being good. My voice was something to store away, like the good china we only used at Christmas. I never stopped to ask if I was alive or just functioning. At 19, I married Harold. He was decent, steady, serious. On our wedding day, standing in borrowed lace that didn't quite fit, I wanted to say, "I'm not ready." The words filled my mouth, heavy like stones, but I smiled and said, "I do," because good women say yes. Good women don't have desires of their own. Good women fade into the background. And I became very good at fading. For 60 years, I moved like a ghost in my own house, up before everyone, asleep after everyone, and in between, gone. I thought that was love. I thought that was virtue. But listen, about now I ought to ask you, slowly, gently, if you want to, you can subscribe to this channel. Turn on the little bell so you'll know when I speak again. Only if you wish. God bless you, truly. Now where was I? Ah, yes, the day Harold died, when the house finally went quiet, when there was no one left to serve, no one left to please, no one left to tend to. That silence wasn't peace, it was fear, because without someone to serve, who was I? Sundays were the worst. For 30 years this house filled up. Children, cousins, neighbours, 15 people sometimes, 20. I'd be up at 5, making roast chicken, green beans, biscuits from scratch, gravy thick enough to coat a spoon. I never sat down with them. I stood at the sink, hands cracked from dishwater, listening to laughter drift in from the dining room. I ate leftovers, standing up, cold biscuit in my hand. They thought I was happy, serving. I thought so too. But some Sundays I imagined dropping every plate, walking out the front door, letting them wash their own dishes. Good women don't. Think like that. Good women. Pour more coffee. When my babies were born, I thought purpose had finally arrived, and I loved them. Lord, I loved them. But some afternoons I locked myself in the bathroom, sat on the tile floor, back against the tub, the smell of bleach in the air, and cried into a towel so no one would hear. I loved them, but I hated what I'd become. Whatever you want, I'd say, whenever Harold asked anything. Dinner, Sunday plans, anything. 50 years of whatever you think. 50 years of sealing my opinions in jars, lining shelves in my chest and never opening them. After he passed, I looked around this house and it felt full of unopened jars, and I couldn't remember what I'd put inside. When I was 45, I bought a red dress, bright red, like something alive. I tried it on in a cramped store dressing room, mirror cracked down the middle. For one breath I saw myself, different. I hid it in the back of the closet, behind beige, behind grey, behind approval. At night, sometimes, I'd touch the fabric, soft under my fingers, like a promise. Courage wasn't something good women needed, until one Tuesday morning I poured salt in Harold's coffee instead of sugar. By accident, my hands were shaking. He spat it out, shouted, "Grace!" "What are you thinking?" I cleaned the table, silent, made another cup, perfect this time, and watched him leave. 3 months later, the heart attack came, before dawn, in the hospital, machines beeping, antiseptic in the air. I held his hand until it turned cold. I waited for devastation, for the world to collapse. Instead, my first thought was, I don't have to ask permission anymore. I hated myself for thinking it. At the funeral, black dress, casseroles from church ladies. Poor Grace, what will you do now? I cried when they expected it, nodded when they said my life was over. But inside I felt something else. Freedom. A week later, I opened the closet, took out the red dress, put it on. I stood in front of the mirror, and I screamed, for the years erased, for the words swallowed, for the woman buried alive inside me. Neighbours thought it was grief. It wasn't. It was fury. And it was life. That night I slept in that red dress and woke up different. I began speaking out loud in this empty kitchen. "Good morning, Grace," I'd tell myself. My voice sounded foreign, like meeting a stranger. Turns out I like my coffee stronger than he did. I prefer old gospel hymns on the radio. I'm content with toast and beans for supper. I enjoy sitting in the living room, even when no one's visiting. At 75, I met myself in the mirror, and she was still here. My children call more now. "Mama, you sound different." "I'm fine," I say, and I'm not lying. I miss the good parts. His hand during a Sunday broadcast, the smell of his aftershave. But I don't miss disappearing. So listen carefully, because my breath isn't what it used to be. First, being alone isn't the same as loneliness. Loneliness is living a lifetime without ever asking what you want. Second, it's not too late, even at 80. Your voice can shake, that's all right. The time you have left belongs to you, not them. And third, sometimes the deepest love is choosing not to vanish anymore. This morning I sat right here, black coffee steaming, morning light coming through the curtains. My hands spotted and wrinkled, wrapped around the mug, steady. For the first time in my life, I feel whole. 82 years it took me, 8 long decades to find myself. But I'm here, alone, alive, present in my own story. No one tells you that can happen. No one tells you you can begin again at 80, that you can meet yourself when everyone else thinks you're finished. But you can. I did. And if I, with these tired bones and this worn-out breath, could do it, so can you.